Hello and welcome to Wedding Wednesdays with Weddings Online. My name is Kelly and I'm a former wedding planner and blogger, and I'm obsessed with weddings. If you're planning a wedding in Ireland, you're in the right place. You're going to learn the tried and tested methods to planning your dream wedding without the added stress. Think of this as your one-stop shop for everything to do with planning your wedding in Ireland, with me, your new wedding planning bestie, and a cup of tea. This is Wedding Wednesdays with Weddings Online. Well, hello, it is Wednesday, so we have another episode of Wedding Wednesdays in store for you. And today we're talking all about planning an Instagrammable wedding. So if you are like me and you find yourself scrolling through Reels all the time, then you're probably thinking about how you can make sure that your wedding looks really good so your friends and family will be taking pictures and videos and posting them all over Instagram. Well, if that's you, you're in the right place because that's exactly what we're talking about today. So I'm going to share some expert tips. I actually have a specific expert who's going to join us later on, who's a photographer, who's going to help you to get photo ready. But before we begin, I'm going to make one very, very important clarification for this episode. So we're talking all about Instagrammable weddings, but my philosophy when it comes to weddings is that they shouldn't only look really good, but you want to create experiences where your guests feel looked after, they feel like they can have a great time, they're really relaxed, and the more relaxed they are, the more that they're enjoying themselves, the more they will take pictures and videos and post them. So the tips that I'm going to share will be how you can help your guests have, access to facilities that will help them to capture photos, things that you can do to create spaces where your guests will want to take photos. But those tips that I'm going to share will really go hand in hand with the experience that you create so that your guests have an awesome time. So I always say that the best way to keep your guests looked after is to make sure that they have somewhere to sit and they've got something to eat and something to do. So if you can do those things, then your guests will already be having a great time. And then the tips that I'm sharing will be something that you can add to the mix so that your wedding looks really good and you've got something in place where your guests can actually capture all the fun that they're already going to be having. So what I'm not suggesting is that all you've got to do is make your wedding look really good and it will be great. Because the reality is a lot of people don't care about beautiful decor. Other couples who are getting married or who have just gotten married, they will care because, wedding decor and planning is probably at the forefront of their minds, just like it is for you at the moment. But the average guest probably won't care. So we want to make them care. And this is how you do it. Step number one, you want to create spaces where people will want to take photos. So here are a few ideas. Category number one, things like a photo booth, a selfie mirror, or a 360-degree video recording space. Have you ever seen, celebrities on the red carpet at something like the Oscars, where they're standing on a platform and there's a 360-degree camera that spins around them and they're slow-mo dancing? That's something you can actually have at your wedding. That's a space where people want to be, and it looks fun as well. So they're not just standing having a photo, they're actually enjoying themselves. If it's a photo booth or a selfie mirror where there's, some kind of fun prop or something, it's not just about the taking of the photos or the videos, but it's actually having a fun moment as well. Something else you can do is you can create some spaces across your venue that are just really beautiful and people will want to take photos and videos of them because they look really, really good. Here are a few ideas. Some you may have thought of, but some might be new to you. Things like a really good backdrop. So it could be the backdrop to your wedding ceremony, like a really beautiful arch. It could be the backdrop to your cake table. So when you cut the cake, there'll be something really amazing behind you. So as guests are taking pictures of that moment, the space looks really, really good. It could be something like a flower wall. It could be a really fun and quirky looking guest book that your guests will be interacting with anyway, but when they see how cool it is, they'll want to take photos. For example, if you're really into music, you could get a vintage guitar and your guests sign the guitar. That's just a fun idea. What about a Prosecco wall? Everybody loves a Prosecco wall. It's interactive, but also something worth taking photos of. You could do something like get cute light up letters that either spell out your names or the word love. You can have them around the dance floor or in another special part of your wedding venue. And how about something like an incredible looking wedding cake? We actually did an episode a few weeks ago about how to pick the perfect wedding cake. So I'll drop a link to that so you can get a bit of a flavor for how to pick a cake that looks really good with the size and look of your venue in mind. Now, when it comes to creating spaces that people want to take photos of or photos at, you want to make sure that your location is amazing. So don't underestimate the power of a really beautiful wedding venue and wedding location. And what you don't want to do is put so much decor in the space that you miss the moment where your guests walk in and go, wow, look at the scenery, look at this mountain, look at the ocean in the background, look at the beach over there. All of those things that come with your wedding venue are moments that you want people to see and capture. So don't hide them, but create spaces where your guests can actually be outside looking at the scenery. So if your wedding venue is known for having really amazing gardens, or maybe there's ruins, or there's parts of a castle that you're getting married at that are just really amazing to take pictures of, make sure that you're using those spaces and that you're not hiding them, because your venue knows that people will want to see those spaces. And your final tip when it comes to spaces that guests will take photos at is to make sure you have good lighting. So you can have the most amazing backdrop in the world, but if the lighting is unflattering, people will take photos and they'll go, oh, I'm not posting that on Instagram because I look terrible. We've all been there. There's a reason that I have a ring light that is currently on my face at the moment, because if I didn't have it, it would probably be very unflattering. It would be dark and you would see all the angles of my face that I do not want you to see. So lighting is really, really important. My tip is natural light is your best bet, but this is Ireland and sometimes it gets a little gloomy, a little grey, and so it doesn't hurt to have some artificial lighting that makes things look really, really special. It could be something like a ring light in a photo space, like, at a photo booth or, with your selfie mirror. But you obviously don't want to have ring lights all over your venue. So something like fairy lights and candles can really create a romantic atmosphere, and they can really enhance the photos as the evening progresses. Okay, second tip for you is to anticipate the moments that people want to take photos of and create a space for them to do that. So it could be things like the wow moment where you have some kind of interesting entertainment. So maybe there's a performance, or there's like a comedian or a magician doing some kind of a trick. Something like that. It could even be something like your first dance where guests are going to want to capture the moment. Just anticipate those moments ahead of time and consider where your guests will be. So if you're going to have some kind of entertainment, it's always a good idea if it's a bit of a focal point at some point in your timeline, so that guests are part of the moment and they are close enough to the action to capture it. So I love to see a first dance from being around the dance floor. The worst thing that I've experienced is being seated as a guest on the other side of the dance floor. I'm watching the dance happening and I can't really see it. I can't enjoy it. And then as soon as the next song played, which was more of a dancey song, I wasn't close enough to the action to actually jump on the dance floor and join in. So my expert advice is, for your first dance, have your guests around the dance floor. They'll be capturing the moment, so they can be uploading photos and videos to Instagram. But it also means that as soon as your first dance is finished, you can play a really fun song that everybody loves, and they will be right there around the dance floor, and you can say, hey, come and join us. They'll jump on the dance floor and they'll start dancing with you. So think about that. Now, here's the thing that I've seen at a wedding, and I thought it was really fun. I've also seen a few videos doing the rounds on TikTok and Instagram. How about once you've been pronounced married, you allow your guests to whip out their phones. So maybe you've had an unplugged ceremony where guests' phones are packed away, they're in their bags. But for a moment, you've been pronounced married, you're at the top of the aisle, and the celebrant or officiant can say, well, you can whip out your phones. And then what you guys can do is you can spend about 60 seconds, maybe even 2 minutes, slowly making your way down the aisle. You could pose, you can kiss, you can do one of those cool dips. You can do all kinds of things where your guests are specifically taking pictures of you now that you are married. So that's a moment that people will want to capture. So don't fly through it, but actually just say, hey, we're going to take a moment, take some pictures of us now. We're married. People will love it. And then the final thing before we get to our wedding expert is make it easy for your guests to actually capture the photos and post them. Something like Wi-Fi access at the venue is a game changer. I went to a wedding a few months ago. I actually posted about it on Weddings Online. They had Wi-Fi access in what was otherwise a kind of dead spot for cell phone reception. And it meant that I could be taking pictures and videos and uploading them. And I thoroughly enjoyed that. And it's as simple as just asking your venue coordinator what's possible and then making the Wi-Fi password accessible to everyone at your wedding. You could consider having something like a phone charging station with a couple of plug points and chargers. It means people's batteries aren't dying. It's also a safety thing. So if somebody is relying on Google Maps to get back home, or if they need to call a taxi, it means their phones haven't died. It also means that they can be posting photos and videos without worrying that their phone will die at the end of the night. You could consider going old school and having a wedding hashtag. Now, I say old school because hashtags are still a thing, but we've been doing them for weddings probably for about 10 years now. But there's a reason. It's because it works. If you create a wedding hashtag, your guests will be able to add the hashtag to their photos, and it means that they'll all end up in a bit of a public feed where you can have a look through Instagram and you can see their photos and videos, and they'll all be collated in one space. You could consider doing something like a photo scavenger hunt. You just print something out, put it up like on the tables. You could have cute little signs. And the scavenger hunt will really give your guests things to take photos of. Not only does this provide really cool photo moments that you can see from the perspective of all your guests, but it could be a bit of an icebreaker for people at the table who might not know each other. It's a talking point. It's something they can do together. And here are some ideas of things that you could put on your scavenger hunt. It could be things like, look out for a guest who's wearing a dicky bow, or something like the word love. Remember we spoke about those light up letters? If the word love is in light up letters, they'll spot that and take pictures. Could be something like find a bad dancer, or take photos of the happy couple. So you basically get to see, your whole wedding from the perspective of different people, and they will love it, but so will you. Now, another thing you can do if you want your guests to capture photos and post them, you just have to ask. It could be a sign. It could be a sign with your hashtag. It could just be a simple sign that allows your guests to know that you want them to take pictures. It could also just be an announcement. Your MC could say, hey, the couple would love to see their wedding from your perspective. So please take photos. Please upload them. Tag them. Super simple. If you don't ask, the answer is always no. And now finally, we're going to talk about getting photo ready. And I mentioned that we had a special guest expert. So we've got Timmy from Tim Media, and he is sharing some really, really practical tips. Now you have to think about the fact that you are creating a space that is going to make your guests want to take pictures. But what can you do to be prepared for that? How can you get the most out of your photo moments? How can you work really well with your photographer to make sure that everything is captured amazingly? Timmy shares everything, and I think this is going to be really, really helpful to you. So take a listen.
Timmy from Tim Media here. On the topic of being photo ready for your big day, it all starts really with the timeline. You work with your photographer and work out a timeline for the day, and once that's set, you can kind of relax then, because you know what's going to happen and when, and in that you can include such things as any special moments you want, like for instance first looks with mom, dad, the bridal party, things like that. Next, I would say plan for natural light in the morning. If possible, choose a getting ready location with ample natural light, as it makes for really beautiful and flattering photos. Open up curtains and blinds, let light in to create a bright and airy atmosphere. And we can just work around you then without any intrusion. Next, I would say gather any important details like the shoes, jewellery, invites, rings, things like that, and have them all together. Following with that, I would say try and keep the space tidy in both brides and grooms prep locations. And from that, I would say just relax and trust your photographer and just enjoy the day as much as you want. And the photographer will do their job, and after it you'll look back and you'll forget they were even there, and you'll get all these amazing, incredible moments that they captured.
Amazing advice. That was Timmy from Tim Media. I'm going to drop a link to his profile in the notes for this episode, because you may have questions about wedding photography and he would be absolutely delighted to chat with you. So Timmy, thank you for sharing your expert advice. So that's it for today. All about creating an Instagrammable wedding. Next week is going to be a fun one because next week is actually the 1-year anniversary of the podcast. Can you believe it? Today is episode 52, which means that next week we will have been doing the Wedding Wednesdays podcast for 1 whole year. So we're going to celebrate by talking all about anniversaries and gifts. We're going to go through modern gifts as well as traditional gifts. So if you have an anniversary coming up, I'm going to give you some really cool ideas for some gifts, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be a celebration of everything Wedding Wednesdays with Weddings Online. Well, thank you for listening today. The Wedding Wednesdays with Weddings Online podcast is produced by me, Kelly, and mixed, mastered, and edited by Glenn Hartman. For more wedding planning tips, advice, checklists, and more, visit weddingsonline.ie.